So good day, everybody. Welcome to this webinar organized within the frame of the Prevail project. The webinar is going to deal with landscape management smart solution for wildfire risk mitigation. And we are going to start soon. Just two remarks before starting. So the webinar is going to be recorded, and so it will be available later for download on the Prevail website under the webinar webpage. And a second remark, you have on the Zoom platform an icon that is the third from the left side. And with these questions and answer icon, you can set some questions to the invited speakers. And we will have 2 moments for address your questions. The first moment will be at 10:30 and the second moment at 11:50, when we are going to have 30 minutes of debate. And now I give the floor to Anna Barbati from the University of Tuscia, that is the project leader of the Prevail project, and is going to discuss the goals and aims of this project. And thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Davide. Welcome, everyone. I would like first to thank the main organizer of this event, which are the Costa Foundation. The event is organized jointly with the Prevail project, which is the framework within which one of the products that will be presented today has been produced. I'm the coordinator of the project. So my opening basically is to offer you an idea about the focus of the project. Here we are before the COVID era, 2 years ago. The project is very short in terms of duration, just 2-year project. And as you can see from the logo and from the title, the main focus of the project is on fire prevention and what is the ties between fire prevention and the capability to improve the preparedness and capacity to respond to large fire events. That's why also the logo tries to illustrate this concept. So how can prevail on large forest fire by fire prevention? The project is funded by the European Union Civil Protection Mechanism, and the partners are 5 from Italy, Greece, Portugal, and Spain, either academic institution and research institution. And we started our project from a general awareness. So what is the background? That we are facing and we are experiencing a change in wildfire regimes with an increase of days with extreme conditions, extreme weather condition, and we are facing what we can call the perfect storm for large fire to spread out of control, which is related on one hand to ongoing climate warming, but also to a landscape which is very rich in fuels in terms of amount and continuity, which makes condition extremely dangerous under specific meteorological condition. This is why in the last years in Europe, but globally, we experienced extreme wildfire that exceed the capacity to be controlled by fast repression means, asking for an international cooperation in this, and this is why DG ECO as a mechanism to help countries to support each other in these extreme events. The point is that this fire can translate into disaster in terms of loss on human lives and infrastructure and so on. So that was the condition from which we moved, and the EUCPM mechanism give us the possibility to work on a different perspective, which is the perspective of prevention. If I should say in a nutshell what is the idea of Prevail, is to tie landscape scale fire prevention to fire suppression, because we know that if we are able to transform the landscape to make it more fire resilient and fire resistant, we ease also the fire suppression action. And this perspective, I'm very happy that a recent report has been issued by the European Commission focusing on this specific point of view strategy, where land-based wildfire prevention is seen as a possible strategy to integrate fire suppression by promoting land management practices that are able to transform the landscape into the so-called fire resistant and resilient landscape. But the points from which we start is that there are some bottlenecks, there are barriers to this strategy that needs to be overcome. We analyzed these bottlenecks during our activities, and we can identify some of them in the complexity of the landscape governance issues, because many, if we think to a large scale, there are different land tenure right, private and public owners. There is a fragmentation of the ownership. In some cases, landowners are unknown, disappeared. We have public funding, but public funding is mainly conveyed by rural development programs, and in some cases there is not a full attention to the, not only to the direct prevention, but there is not a full awareness of other land management practices that can subsidize activities of fuel management. There are regulatory barriers, especially concerning prescribed burning. So overall, there is a lack of economic sustainability of applying on a landscape scale fuel management, which prevent us to reach the critical mass which is needed to build up fire resilient and resistant landscape. So starting from this, one of the main activity of the project was to be like a sort of detective throughout Europe. We speak 5 languages, so this is easy to reach what? To reach the initiatives that are already in place in the field, run by public agencies, but also by private, to implement in the field what we call smart solution, a concept that will be introduced later, but basically long-term process in which fuel management is an activity that is sustainable economically in the long term, because it's tied to bioeconomy chains, and which creates synergies and cooperation with other interests in land governance, for instance, habitat conservation. So our role was to collect and document these initiatives in order to disseminate this knowledge to a wider audience of experts. And that's why we choose the Lessons on Fire platform to share this idea, in order to have, on one hand, the possibility to showcase, to document these initiatives, but on the other hand, also to open the field to a cross-fertilization and to the possibility to upload new smart solutions from the community of users on the platform. So to make the debate on this as wider as possible. So this is basically the main focus of our project. I hope that you will enjoy the webinar on behalf of all the partners. And so I leave the floor to the next speaker, and I wish you an interesting webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for having introduced the main themes we are going to discuss, starting with Evangelia Tsartsou, which is she is the police officer of the Prevail project from the DG Eco. And now, please, Evangelia, take the floor and introduce your presentation on how EU Green Deal policies and strategies can promote forest fire prevention and management.
Okay, good morning, everyone. Just a moment to upload my presentation. Can you see my presentation? Can you see?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. First of all, good morning, everyone. And I would like to thank you for this invitation, enabling me and my colleague Joy. Hopefully, my colleague Joy has managed to be connected, and I would like to be sure about this, and also to participate in this very interesting webinar. I would say that apart from my professional responsibility for the implementation and monitoring of this project, I have a scientific interest since I'm a forester scientist, and also I come from a very fire-prone country like Greece, recalling back these deadliest forest fires in August 2018 in Attica, also other catastrophic events in Portugal, in Spain and Italy as well. And I would say that now at the European level, as you can see now to my presentation that is will be following, the EU Green Deal strategies initiatives have created a favorable and enabling environment for forest fire prevention, reduction and management as cost-effective solutions or as solutions that can facilitate wildfire response and preparedness, or at least to mitigate this forest fire impact. I wish all of you today to have a very lovely and fruitful discussion. I encourage this kind of event or other events to be followed in order to promote and to disseminate this project results that I think that are very promising results related to these smart solutions. To reach out, it's very important for us, this phase of dissemination, to reach out a wide range of stakeholders beyond forest authorities, beyond civil protection authorities, as we have secondary or cascading effects of forest fires on cultural heritage, on floods, on soil erosion, droughts, etc. Okay, I move to my presentation now. I'm going to present you how this EU now strategies and policies for this next period, 2020-2027, will promote and strengthen the forest fire prevention, reduction and management. As you may know, climate change and environmental degradation are the existential threats not only for Europe but all of the world. Actually, the European Green Deal is the Commission plan to make Europe's economy sustainable by turning these threats into opportunities, and also in order to overcome these challenges, we need, as a Europe, a new growth strategy. This new growth strategy is the European Green Deal to achieve climate neutrality by 2050, to supply clean, affordable and secure energy, to mobilize industry for a clean and circular economy, to achieve zero pollution and toxic-free environment, to preserve and restore ecosystems and biodiversity, and to deliver a healthy and environmental friendly food system by mobilizing research and fostering innovation as a cross-cutting issue among all these initiatives. Most of the initiatives have already integrated into European strategies. The below 4 strategies have placed a lot of emphasis on forest fire prevention, reductions, and management, as the biodiversity strategy that for 2030 that adopted in May 2020, the upcoming new European forestry strategy that is expected to be adopted in the second quarter of 2021, the recently adopted climate change adaptation strategy in February 2021, and a farm to fork strategy that adopted in May 2020. As for the EU biodiversity strategy, its ultimate goal is how to build resilience, our society resilience against these future threats like climate impact, forest fires, food insecurity, and disease outbreaks, including also to protect wildlife. The EU biodiversity strategy for 2030 contains specific commitments and specific concrete actions to be delivered by 2030. One commitment is to enlarge the existing Natura network of protected area, at least 30% of the land and 30% of the sea in Europe, and to establish a stricter protection framework in the areas of high biodiversity and climate value, like the European primary and old growth forest by 2021. And the second commitment of this biodiversity strategy is the development of a European Nature Restoration Plan, that this restoration plan will focus on 4 main areas to increase organic farming and biodiversity, to halt and reverse the decline of pollinators, to reduce the use of risk of pesticides, and to plant 3 billion trees by 2030. The European Commission has already proposed legally binding restoration targets that are going to be adopted by the end of 2021. This restoration plan is now under public consultation with member states and relevant stakeholders for feedback until 5th of April. And it's worth to highlight here that the restoration of European ecosystem will contribute significantly to reducing and preventing the natural and climate disasters. The EU forestry strategy will build on a biodiversity and climate change adaptation strategy. I need to highlight that there are strong linkages and interdependencies among these 3 strategies: forestry strategy, climate change, and adaptation and biodiversity strategy. The main objective of the forestry strategy is to ensure and enhance healthy and resilient forest, since the resilient forest contributes significantly to reducing and controlling these natural disasters, to secure livelihoods, and to support circular bioeconomy and rural communities. 10 flagship deliverables are expected by this new forestry strategy. DG ECO have been involved in 5 deliverables: how to enhance a forest adaptation facility, how to develop a European framework for forest health and resilience, how to support the restoration of damaged forest from wildfires or pest diseases, and how to develop a forest information and real-time monitoring system. As now for the new adaptation strategy, this strategy for this new period has given a prominent position to the adaptation to the ecosystems like forest, agriculture, water, marine ecosystems that have been severely affected by climate change impact. There are three main objectives of this strategy. It's like smarter adaptation by improving knowledge, reporting and monitoring mechanisms, for example, by improving forest monitoring and reporting information system on forest health and resilience, for more systemic adaptation by supporting policy development at all levels and sectors, how to actively integrate climate change mitigation and adaptation into forest management plans or CAP strategic plans, and how to deploy nature-based solutions within ecosystems. And faster adaptation is how to speed up the implementation of climate change adaptation through research support, Horizon, to improve climate adaptation in land ecosystems, forest, agriculture, and water, to improve climate adaptive capacity of forest genetic resources, to promote climate resilience livestock farming and agriculture, to foster the resilience of good systems, and to reduce climate risk on critical infrastructure. And the fourth strategy that to some degree connected with forest fires resilience in terms of the food security in this emergency crisis is this strategy. The main objective is to deliver a healthy and environmental friendly food system with positive or neutral environmental impact, to mitigate climate change impact, to reverse the loss of biodiversity, and to ensure food security, nutrition, and public health. DG ECO have been involved in one initiative of this Farm to Fork strategy, that is the development of EU contingency plan in order to ensure food supply and food security in times of crisis. This contingency plan contains also the development of a common EU food crisis response mechanism, coordinated by the Commission and the relevant member states. And it will cover also different food system related sectors that may be affected by food crisis, like agriculture, aquaculture, fisheries, health, and transport issue. The second part of my presentation is related to the European financial framework to support the previous strategies under the Green Deal, and also the implementation of disaster risk management investments, including also forest fire prevention and management investments, is this EU Next Generation Fund. The budget is about 750 billion euro. This budget and this fund based on three pillars. The first pillar is how to support member states to recover through Recovery and Resilience Facility, through the REACT EU Fund, to reinforce Rural Development Program and reinforce Just Transition Mechanism. The second pillar is how to kickstart the economy and to support private investments. And the third pillar is to learn from the lessons learned from the COVID-19 crisis by implementing new health products, reinforce RescEU, and reinforce programs for research, innovation, and external action. Recovery and Resilience Facility is, let's say, the centerpiece of this Next Generation Fund. The budget of this is like 670 billion euro. This fund provides large-scale support to member states for reforms and investments to mitigate the COVID-19 impact, to support member states to address challenges as identified in the European semester. And now it's the opportunity for the member states to prepare their national recovery and resilience plans, including also forest fires resilience plans, to submit to the Commission by the end of April, and also in order to be implemented by 2024. The cohesion fund for this programming period 2021-2027, I guess that most of you are more familiar with this cohesion fund. There are, for this programming period, two additional funds. One is the Just Transition Fund, is the first pillar of Just Transition mechanism. Is additional fund to European Regional Development Fund and Social Fund, provides support to the territories facing serious socioeconomic challenges because of the transition out of the coal, for example. And for this programming period, there is also a technical support instrument that member states can request additional technical support to strengthen their administrative capacity to prepare long-term investments and reforms. And the other additional fund of the cohesion fund is the REACT EU fund, is a fund of 55 billion euro. Its eligible expenditure will up to 100%. It targets short-term crisis repair actions like labor market, healthcare system, and also SMEs. And this fund provides immediate support to member states' economy through regional development fund, social fund, and this fund for the most deprived. The Cohesion Policy Fund for this programming period will focus on swift recovery after the COVID-19 lessons learned, and which is the new compared to the 2018 civil cohesion policy proposal, is that there is an additional flexibility for the member states to transfer resources among these European funds, and make sure that cohesion policy is better equipped to respond to the unforeseen events, to reinforce the preparedness of the health systems, and to support disaster risk management investments, including forest fire reduction and resilience investments, under the strategic objective 2 of the Cohesion Fund for this program and period, given the precondition that member states will fulfill the enable condition that existed for this strategic objective. The DG ECHO, in order to support member states like Greece, Croatia, Latvia, and Slovakia, supported directly civil protection authorities to develop national disaster risk management plans, or to provide assistance, technical assistance, in order to prioritize disaster risk management, including forest fire management investments, in order to be mature project to be financed under the Cohesion Policy Fund. And I move now to the third part of presentation, that is some examples of nature-based solution. I guess that most of you are very also expert for this topic. I have chosen this topic to present to you, since that nature-based solutions will be the core investments under the Cohesion Fund for this programming period. This concept of nature-based solution has been integrated into the most of the Green Deal strategies for this period. A concept that an accepted definition from the European Commission is that solutions that are inspired and supported by nature, which are cost-effective, providing parallel environmental, social, and economic benefits, and helping to build resilience. This concept also, there are also other terminologies like ecosystem-based solution, green infrastructure, or ecosystem-based risk reduction solutions. Why nature-based solutions will be the future challenges to address natural disaster? It's like because Europe lost 300 billion euro because of the natural disasters like wildfires, like floods, storms, and etc. There is a high confidence that these losses will be increased in the very near future. Also, in the period 1980 to 2010, we have 75,000 deaths in Europe because of heat waves. That is calculated 67% of all deaths from natural disasters. And all the climate change scenarios and projections have foreseen that the European citizens will be impacted by heat waves until 2040 in terms of their health and well-being. Also for the period from 2011 to 2020, up to 50 billion euro per year is calculated as EU opportunity cost of not halting biodiversity loss and degradation of ecosystem services. Degradation of ecosystem services, among other meanings, means also less water purification. Globally, 20% of urban drinking water is polluted. I would like also to present how important is the application of large-scale nature-based solution or small-scale nature-based solution in different ecosystems in order to have an integrated approach to natural disaster, forest fires, or here is an example of high meteorological risk reduction. Although these ecosystems seem to be different, are highly connected in order to have an integrated approach to reduce the risk. For example, the application of large-scale nature-based solution in mountain areas like afforestation, like slope or soil stabilization, or across rivers, like widening rivers or establishing of retention basins, or ecosystem-based solutions on coastal level, like sand dunes or protection dikes, protection walls, and small-scale nature-based solution in urban environments like green roofs, green walls, or the use of permeable building materials or permeable pavements can reduce greatly for example, flood risk or other kind of risk. I have chosen also a cross-border project under IDIREC funding that it seems to be interesting. For sure, there are better examples, nature-based solutions in forests, but on purpose, I have chosen this example in order to highlight how important it is to address natural disaster risk like forest fires, having this cross-border or territorial cooperation and approach to address natural disaster risk. Here is a better solution in a forest that is located in the border between Poland and Slovakia. The intervention is the regeneration of forest to make it less vulnerable to tree pests and diseases that in the past these forests suffer from these pest diseases. And some intervention like the construction of hiking trail or the planting of 15 billion seedlings followed by ecological principles can deliver specific ecological, economic, and social impacts like by protecting or stabilizing the soil, preventing floodings, encourage ecotourism, and promoting this social, promoting this cross-border or territorial cooperation. And another good example is Horizon Research Pearl project, other Horizon, that it's how is another integrated approach how to manage flood risk, integrating also other ecosystems. This project, there are some innovative elements. So one is how this project combine early warning system technologies with nature-based solution approaches. And also this project proposes an improved quantitative microbial risk assessment methodology to address health risk. Since the health risks are highly connected with floods in cities, also health risks are highly connected with the forest fires. And another innovative element is very important for us since the SEDAI framework requires a holistic disaster risk management approach, taking into consideration cultural heritage element. is the Article 4 of Flood Directive that require member states to have a risk assessment take into consideration also cultural heritage. This project is a good example how to apply nature-based solution in a cultural heritage in order to reduce risk. This is a case study in Thailand, in a specific island, Ayutthaya, that is characterized as a World Heritage Site. This is also the last slide that I would like take this opportunity to suggest also to the forest managers or civil protection authorities that carry out forest fire risk assessment, that is very important to have this multi-risk analysis approach, taking into consideration other cascading effects like forest fire impact on health, forest fire impact on cultural heritage, and also impact on floods. I'm very happy really to answer to your questions, and now before your questions I would like to give the floor to my colleagues Joy in order to say some words about the project or some other things about the Cohesion Fund. Thank you. Joy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Evangelia, and good morning, everybody. So my name is Joy Kassanelenburg, and I'm actually the project officer for Prevail at the Commission. I arrived towards the end of this project, since at the introduction it was said that it's a 2-year project that is ending this year, but that's perhaps the right moment to see the results. So I'm very glad. Before I joined DG ECHO, I worked in cohesion policy for 10 years. So I'd like to say a word on synergies between civil protection and cohesion. I think my colleague Evangelia presented very, very well what the Commission initiatives are in terms of policy, but there's also a lot of funds and money available for projects like yours to be financed. So the civil protection mechanism is there, as you know, to protect the people, the environment, the property, but also, as was just mentioned, the cultural heritage in the event of natural and man-made disasters, but also when there is terrorism or technological, radiological, environmental accidents. We have now at DG ECHO launched a new call for what we call Track 2 projects, so the one specifically where Prevail was selected. So this is for cross-border projects and marine pollution. We launched it about 2 weeks ago. And there is actually an info day tomorrow to explain the new call and the new funding opportunities. Usually the potential projects that can be financed usually precede the much larger investments that can be done under European structural and investment funds. So we finance, for instance, studies, design, development, and testing of innovative ideas. It can be also evaluation or improvement of existing practices. It can be developing of guidelines or dissemination of best practices as well, thanks to transnational cooperation. And so this work can actually be mainstreamed then through European structural and investment funds like the ERDF or the Cohesion Fund. It's actually the very good timing because we have a new financial framework starting from 2021 to 2027. And these are multi-annual programs where member states select the projects right now. So that's a good moment if you're interested to contact the regional ministries in charge of these funds. So what's really interesting for us is since 2015, the investments are now concentrated in what we call thematic objectives to have a maximum impact. And the thematic objective number 5 is the one to promote climate change adaptation, risk prevention, and risk management. And under this, the ERDF and the Cohesion Fund, they can focus on developing strategies and action plans for climate change adaptation, risk prevention, and they can do that at national, regional, local level. And they can also help develop tools and investment for disaster management systems. So these, I think, are important synergies to keep in mind, because there are much larger sums as well for investment there. And then perhaps a last word on the Solidarity Fund. We would want obviously not to use it, but this is a fund that is set up to respond to major natural disasters and to show European solidarity. This fund deals with catastrophic events like floods, forest fires, of course, but earthquakes, storms, and droughts. And they supplement actually the member states' public expenditure in these areas. So this is in a short word what the Commission can do for you. And I'm really glad to participate in this webinar today. So thanks a lot for the opportunity.
So thank you very much, Eva and Joy, for this broad overview of the EU strategy. We saw many tools, many opportunities that can have an impact on how we deal with fire management in Europe. So, but it's also very challenging, you know. So we have a lot of opportunities that are transdisciplinary, transversal. And so one relevant question that I got here for you is how the European Commission is able to coordinate all these cross-linked strategies. So is there like in the radar to have an interagency that is able to, let's say, integrate all these opportunities and make, let's say, create the setting for an optimization of the use of these resources?
Of course, a very good question. First of all these instruments, all these strategies have synergies and complementaries. Also, the funds have synergies and complementaries. And each DG is responsible for its strategy, but together, all the DG, we have cooperation in order to explore synergies and complementaries. When we have a member states submitted an application, there is also a cooperation among all the DG in order to explore all this synergy. For us, also there is an added value to have these complementaries and synergies, both in terms of the member states application and investments, and also at the EU level. For example, the deliverables of EU forestry strategy will be built on biodiversity and climate change adaptation strategy in a way that there are interdependencies of these strategies. It seems that every DG is responsible for its strategy, but also there is a good and close cooperation among the DG and among the member states. And that's why an example is that now we have received some very large-scale forest fire prevention and resilience from Greece. From Portugal, this is under evaluation of this application, because now, as I mentioned, it's really time for the member states to submit a very, a large-scale application, like for an integrated approach for national key risk management and reduction, including all forest fire prevention and management. And this application in a recovery and resilience facility, there is a very close cooperation among all the DGs in order to explore synergies and to avoid overlapping of funding and overlapping of the same funding to the same investments.
Yeah.
Hopefully that I have covered your questions. Yes. I don't know, Joy, if you have to add something. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm sorry we had no more time for other questions because we are a bit late, but thank you very much, Eva and Joy, for having introduced, let's say, the framework in which we work. And now I give the floor to Eduard Plana from the Forest Science and Technology Center of Catalonia. He was one of the partners involved in the Prevail project, and he's going to tell us about this integrated approach for landscaping wildfire risk mitigation in a circular way that will address this point also of creating synergies between different opportunities to tackle the wildfire problem. So please, Eduard.
Yes, I hope that you can see the screen now.
Yes, we can.
It is working, yes?
Not yet full screen.
Okay, let me see. I don't know. Right.
Yeah, but no worries. I think it works also like this.
Yeah, okay. So let's move fast because the previous presentation was really interesting and some topics of my presentations are inside the previous presentation. So I think that we can get some time. I'm not sure if I know that I really would like to thank Eva and Joy the being here in this webinar, because at least we are dealing with wildfire risk. They are representing the DG ECO. So I think that in recent time, we see perfectly how fires are more and more impacting in infrastructures, in people, and how these issues related with soil protection are becoming more and more important. Okay. Well, maybe there is a really, I'm trying to move fast because most of the audience for sure are very, I mean, they know perfectly what we are dealing with wildfire risk, but I would like to make this refresh about this socio-natural dimension of fire hazard. I think that in difference with floods or earthquakes, even windstorms, we are also involved in other multi-risk projects within DG ECO. We can see that normally these other natural hazards, we cannot change so much, we cannot modify so much the hazard. The hazard understood as the intensity of the hazard. This is a difference that we have with fires. We know from fire triangle, fire spread triangle, what is showing us is that at least fuels are one of the main drivers of the hazard. So we can interact with the fuels distributions at landscape level, of course, within forest structures. So having, I don't know, I don't like these words, but just to make it very easy, clean or really dense forest, fire behavior will be very different. And why this is important? Of course, this is quite obvious for most of us, but this is important because this correct understanding up to what extent hazard can be modified should also help to explain how resilient landscape can be part of the solution. I like to use these two pictures from our Catalan Fires and Rescue Service because they are helping us as a forestry community a lot to explain society which are really the limits of the emergency capacity. So of course, fire services, they have the opportunity every summer, unfortunately, to have this dialogue with society because especially in Mediterranean areas, we have this phenomenon every summer. So they are, thanks to and in cooperation with them, we are really doing an important step in increasing the social awareness about how vulnerable landscapes in terms of wildfire risk are increasing the problem. So, well, we could summarize the problem of wildfire risk, especially these extreme wildfire events that are posing so many problems in terms of soil protection, as a combination of this potential of ignitions, this fire spread capacity of landscapes, and of course, the capacity to do suppression and to manage the emergency. Some critical events like in, of course, Portugal 2017, etc., show us up to what extent these high intensity fires are becoming a problem also of emergency management. So especially fire spread capacity is fully influenced by the fuel we have on the landscape. Of course, wildfire risk management, it's currently, and in every region, country, etc., it's a mix of measures in terms of prevention, preparedness, response, recovery, and that are acting in trying to reduce hazard vulnerability exposure. Of course, land planning, for instance, has a strong link with exposure and vulnerability, but I want to mention once more that with wildfire, through fuel management, we have a great big opportunity to reduce the hazard. And of course, if we are able to reduce the hazard, less efforts are necessary to reduce exposure and vulnerability. Normally this we can, and this is something that we framed in the project. So we distinguish these three main, let's say, or complementary, better, risk management scenarios. And of course, we have the typical active prevention with the fire breaks or currently strategic management points, etc. Of course, we have a, let's say, a more indirect passive prevention related with all activities in the land. And here we have main two chapters or two main group of activities, those related with forestry, biomass, district heating, etc., energy, and other big group related to mosaic landscapes, so agriculture, crops, grazing, etc. And of course, all countries are developing their own preparedness and response system. I think that Anna showed also perfectly in the presentation to what extent through this passive prevention, through the resilience landscape, we are going to reduce the efforts or the necessary efforts in preparedness response, even in active prevention. Well, but this is not new. So the first picture on the left up is from the beginning of 19th century here in Catalonia. So before, in the previous presentation, when Eva talked about the nature-based solution, what I see, at least in this picture, is a traditional nature-based solution regarding wildfire risk. So we are not just discovering nothing new. We are just, I mean, at least the severity of fires are calling us for put more attention in how this land management can be integrated into wildfire risk management strategies. Other pictures are, for instance, this one is one of the best cases selected in our project about the use of vineyards, crops, together with the strategic management points for fire prevention. Another picture of our traditional forest structure with wood production, but also grazing inside. This is here also in our territory. And I also like to take advantage of this webinar to put this picture of an interview that, well, I was participating in this interview, but doesn't mind the person, about the important role that also environmental groups can also play in disseminating the fire ecology and disseminating the contribution of the fuel management in reducing fire risk. But I would like to also to make the point that this is not only an issue of, rural landscapes, where when I mean that there is an important need of moving this discussion about the contribution of fuel management in reducing risk and disaster risk overall in the urban interface areas. So for a long time, we see forest as exposed and vulnerable elements in front of the fire, but more and more in some way, what happens now is the forests are becoming the hazard. So this fallen landscape can suppose a problem, can generate these fires impacting in urban areas. So we should move to these fire resilience or fire resistant landscapes able to protect these infrastructures. So Eva explained perfectly so much initiative moving and running together. So we are really in a consistent, or we have now, I think, really a nice opportunity, because we have a policy frame very consistent with this integrated, inclusive approach. Basically, maybe here only mention the how also the contribution can do the EU bioeconomy strategy, but also the common agricultural policy is highlighting the importance of protecting landscapes, mosaic, etc. Well, but this is, I'm not going to stop here because was also explained by Eva. So within Prevail, we define this concept of smart solutions, practical measures or initiative implemented in a sustainable manner, enhancing cost efficiency, optimizing the synergy and the cooperation between actors, and from a multi-objective perspectives, able to capitalize the best existing knowledge and being permanently under a lessons learned approach. We also prepare this, let's say, figure where we can see the different components, how they can be integrated, wildfire strategic prevention with rural development, with biodiversity conservation, how can be used these techniques for fire brigades training, synergies with European funds, as was previously shown, a strong link with the fire prevention and ecosystem services provision. So there is a strong link with water provision, with landscape provision at least. Also multi-risk situations, forest protection function is crucial, especially, for instance, in the fires spreading in alpine areas, for instance. And of course, all the synergies with the value chain of the land activities. Maybe there is some important component, more and more important now, missing here in this graphic, that is all the topics related with the urban agenda. So there is more and more reflections with regards to the urban agenda, and we should, as a forester or as a risk manager community, also look for this link, as I said before, how to protect this infrastructure from the fire. Well, I'm arriving to the end. So basically, through the project, we prepare this, a template. We're trying to, as Anna said in the previous presentation, identify some smart solutions. We organize them, as I said before, in splitting the prevention with the traditional active prevention, fire breaks, water points, etc., with this passive prevention, where we create three main groups: forestry production, maintaining mosaic, and other support, structural support, also in terms of innovative technologies, services in rural areas, etc. So to attract young people, for instance, etc. At the end, we have about around 30 smart solutions. Of course, this is a point of departure, and we have mapped them, included them in a digital portal that in the next presentation will be presented, and is one of the main objectives of this webinar, also to show this tool. But we don't finish with this. We also use this project to make a gap analysis about the constraints, challenges, opportunities for implementing this kind of smart solutions. So it's not only the issue of what is working, but also how make these smart solutions work. Well, very fast, because I don't want to take more time for the next presentation, but here there is highlighted some key aspects that we take from the interviews, talking with risk managers and foresters and etc. So normally, the needs are huge, especially Mediterranean areas with long territories at risk, let's say, and the resources are really limited. And of course, main resources are coming from the agricultural policy, common policy, but sometimes are not enough budget available. Of course, the lack of profitability of most of land activities is adding difficulties, even sometimes facilities or human capital, you know, in very rural areas, people able to manage all the bureaucracy, all the administrative issues. And sometimes also they highlight the legal constraints in relation with the forest ownership. So the capacity to carry out these fuel management actions, sometimes it's something so easy, like it's difficult to identify where is the forest owner and ask him for permission, etc. So there is a need of policy harmonization and coherence. I think that the previous presentation and also answering the question, Eva, show the important steps that the European Commission is doing on that. So in being in putting coherence within the policies, but we should move forward in landscaping this wildfire risk management. And this means also to include actors, also private actors, but global actors in the issue. So also land planners, urban planners, etc. There is a need of a formal recognition of wildfire prevention function, but overall how to compensate this. Of course, here there is a lot of challenges in terms of win-win strategies. There are in other risks like flood risks, they have some previous experience in the implementation of ecosystem service payment ecosystem services schemes, but we should look for how to make this function working in terms of economy also for who is providing this. To move forward to better coordination and these collaborative private-public frameworks. A novel funding mechanism, there is some opportunities. I mean, for sure we are going to invest money in reducing risk in the future. Maybe with this resilience landscape, we can move some of these of future expenses to the present, also connect better these social demands with land managers, as I said you before, with this payment for ecosystem services schemes, for instance, and an increase of the societal awareness and participation into these disaster risk reduction strategies. Bioeconomy is a tool, of course, fire-adapted communities, of course, and also having this dialogue with society about which kind of risk management scenarios they can want to deal with. Finally, my last point, this really sincerely didn't came from the interviews, but this is very present in most of, at least in the media and sometimes in the social nets, is this perceived, let's say, or potential conflicts between these fuel management proposals and in some cases biodiversity conservation. So I'm not saying that this is happening, but this is at least more in the social debate, and just to be aware about it, because sometimes we think that we are plenty in the reason, we don't need to explain too much the things, but this is not always happening, and we are promoting, for instance, biomass for fire prevention. Sometimes appears some questions, let's say, from environmentalist groups or neighbors about if this is going to destroy the forest. So this is part of the debate also. And that's all. So many thanks for your attention.
Thank you very much, Eduard. I think you did a very good overview of one of the most exciting things we did in Prevail, and we had the opportunity to go and visit and document these smart solution programs, and we thought it was good to have them in a network on a platform. And so thanks to Pau Costa Foundation, we created with this spatial repository on landscape solution to prevent wildfires. So please, Mariona, Borràs, to you to show us this platform.
Yes, thank you very much. I will start sharing my screen.
We can see it.
Please, David. Okay, thank you very much. So yes, as you said, Davide, I will present this new map that we have developed jointly with the Forest Science and Technology Center of Catalonia. First of all, I would like to thank you to the Prevail project and the European Union for making this map possible. I would like to start presenting myself. My name is Mariona Borràs. I work at the Costa Foundation, and I am in charge of the communication area. And I would like to explain, first of all, that this new map is hosted and is part of the Lessons on Fire. The Lessons on Fire is a platform that we created in 2015. It is based on what we call virtual communities of practice. A virtual community of practice is a groups of people who share a concern, a set of problems, or are passionate about a topic, and who deepen their knowledge and expertise in this area by interacting on an ongoing basis, created under web technologies and working through the web. This is important to know because here we are linking the web platforms and the knowledge and experience of our community. In our case, our domain are the wildfires. Our community are the European and international wildfire experts, the policymakers, trainers, journalists, students, teachers, all those people that are interested or work in the wildfire domain. And finally, as a final component of a virtual community of practice, you need a practice. And here we have all the members that are not only interested in the domain, but they are also practitioners on wildfires. As I mentioned before, this platform was created in 2015. The objectives were to create a site of reference for the wildfire community, to provide a site actively managed by the wildfire community, and provide tools to easily search information on wildfires. Here I will summarize the first phase of the development of this platform that was founded by the Fire Efficient Project. We were partners in that project. At that time, we created the communities to organize information. We integrated a database of experts in this platform, organized by professional profiles and topics. This database of experts is called Directory in the platform, as you will see afterwards. Nowadays, we have more than 900 experts registered in the platform. For the next point, we have created this repository of documents, and we wanted to stimulate the discussion between European experts. This means sharing lessons learned, good practices, experience, etc. During the second phase that was developed in 2018, and it was funded by the Net Risk Work project. Here we created the Wikifire, that is a dictionary of fire terms. And here we say, and it is collaborative, because the authors of these terms, or the first person that posts a fire term, he posts a definition, but after that, another collaborator can edit this definition. So at the end, you can have, I don't know, I will say a fire behavior definition, but collaboratively made by different collaborators. We also created a calendar, an agenda for the fire community. They can share new events, or they can consult these events. There is also a section for the job offers, and also the registered participants can apply to these offers. And finally, there is an access to the content of the risk platform, that is another platform also related to fire risk, European fire risk, but that we found that some knowledge could be shared between the two platforms. So we linked both of them. This is what we had since last month. And today we are launching this new section of the map, that is the landscape solutions to prevent wildfires map. And the idea was to gather all the solutions that are that we have identified through the work that the Eduard has done in the project, but also other initiatives that are are being developed in the world, in Europe, and can be made visible here in a map. It must be said that this platform is very useful, very user friendly. This means that anyone can be registering, is free, and anyone can post content in this platform. Now I am going to jump to the platform. Davide, let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Okay, great. So this is the Lessons on Fire platform. As you can see here in the main menu, there are all the features that I presented before. And here we have the solutions map. This is the page for the landscape solutions to wildfires. As you can see, all these pins correspond to those initiatives that Eduard and Marta already identified during the Prevail project. Here on the left, you have some filters, and you can choose or you can start searching initiatives. Like, for example, I want to search initiatives related to preparedness. Let's see what happens. So there are less than before. I want also that these are not only related to preparedness, but also to prevention. We will apply and it will select. I think that here it's selected almost the same. But if we also want to choose those initiatives related to preparedness, prevention, and response, then we have less initiatives than before, okay? As we have chosen prevention, then we can see this new field, type of prevention. And here we can choose between these three options: direct action for preventing, this kind of active prevention, forestry production, or maintaining mosaic landscape and grazing. Let's see if there is one initiative corresponding, for example, to fire production. Yeah, we have one initiative in Italy, the Centro Regionale per l'Addestramento alla Pineta di Tocchi, okay, in Toscana. Other filters that we can apply: the scope, for example, if these initiatives are working in a local, regional, state, European, or global level. Which type of initiative, if it's a best practice, a field reference guide, training material, mobile app, website, software, ITDSS, or video and media resources. In which language this initiative provides information. For example, if it is a very local initiative in Italy, probably they only post information in Italian. Or, well, here you can choose by language, for example, let's say Italiano. And then also you can you can choose a free text, okay? Let's first test the Italian function, okay? It works. There are two initiatives of prevention of forestry production in Italian that provide information in Italian. Yeah, and then let's test the last field, for example, and let's put free text like silvopastoralism. No, it's not, yeah. Okay, so this is a free text, and there is one initiative that corresponds in its text with silvopastoralism. when we go to when we click on this initiative, we have the detail of the initiative. We have the promoter, the type of solution, the territorial scope, the risk management stage, type of prevention, and the languages that they provide information. Here we can see the logo of the initiative. We can see the pin in a regional zoom, let's say like this. We have the brief description in English and another description in English or in the language, in the local, in the non-English language, let's say like this. We have the link to the website, and we can have images, and we can link to YouTube or Vimeo for posting videos. This is how an external user can see the details of these initiatives. But let me show the back end, or let's say how can an external user post a new initiative, a new solution. Okay, now I am logged in. I can go to the solutions map. This is the home of the lessons on fire through the main menu or through this icon. When I click this icon, I have a new button here that I couldn't see before because I was not logged in the platform. And here it says create landscape solution to wildfire. So when I click here, I can post a new solution. Well, here I will click here. You need to put the title of the solution, then the type of solution, the best practice, it's I don't know, software, IT. If your solution is not defined in this type of solution, then you can customize it and you can put here like new type solution, or I don't know, a new type of solution, okay? We have to choose the territorial scope, the risk management stage. And here, let me stop because I said preparedness. Okay, nothing happens. But if I click prevention, then I have this new field, as we could see before, type of prevention. Which type of prevention is my solution providing? Let's say maintaining mosaic landscape grazing and direct action for prevention, or for preventing. In which languages I will provide my information. Okay, let's say English, Dutch. And here I could write another language, Arabic. Who is the promoter? Okay, PCF. Then here we have created two fields for the description. One brief description in English, and another free description. This is a mandatory description in the own language. Then I can upload a logo for my solution. I can upload images. Yeah.
Great. I think it's very cool.
It's very, yeah, it's very intuitive. And then only here I'd like to show that the address can be, I don't know, posted like this. You don't need to put the geographical coordinates, but
if you agree, Mariona, I think it would be nice to have like a short video tutorial that we can upload on our webinar webpage on Prevail project. So I think there could be a guideline for who want to have maybe interact with the platform.
There is a how to use platform here on the bottom of the lessons on fire, and there are some instructions to post these solutions map initiatives.
Yes, great. Thank you very much. Sorry, we have
yeah, we have to move on. I only wanted to do 4 final remarks. Is that the Lessons on Fire is a modular platform allowing new functionalities. That since 2015, the Lessons on Fire has been expanded, including features from 3 different European DG Eco projects. That the Lessons on Fire is a collaborative environment for the wildfire community, and that this platform is an example of a sustainable outcome of the European projects. And this is all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mariona. It's a very cool tool, and I think it's an opportunity for the whole wildfire community in Europe, but globally. So thanks, and I hope people will use and consult this information, relevant information on the platform. So now we get to a point in which we have 2 experts, 2 international experts, and it's interesting to hear their view on different subjects. The first one is Alexander Held. It is a senior expert for the European Forest Institute, and he's going to discuss about forest management, prescribed burning to mitigate wildfire risk in Central Europe. So welcome, Alex, and thanks for coming and respond to our invitation.
Thank you very much, Davide, for the introduction. I just need to, can you see my PowerPoint now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much for the nice introduction, and thank you very much for this very important webinar, because it is addressing the fire topic from a different angle, and surely from an angle that we need in the future. I thank you for being invited and having the opportunity to share some insights with you from Central Europe. I'm based in Germany with the European Forest Institute, but I had the privilege in my previous life to work in many countries across the globe, and had my fair share in firefighting and more in prescribed burning. So I can compare a little bit what is happening in other places to the developments we have in Central Europe. As I said, I'm based in Germany, but what I'm presenting is of course true for Germany and for my personal experience, but very similar to our neighboring countries in Central Europe. The title of my presentation, as you can see, is Forest Management in Prescribed Burns, Mitigating Wildfire Risk in Central Europe, and all this in 20 minutes. My old professor in South Africa, Winston Trollope, said, if your idea doesn't fit on the back of a cigarette box, it's not a good idea. So I try to fit everything now here in 20 minutes. To do so, I have limited the slides with text information on about 5 slides, and the rest are lovely pictures with a bit of an entertaining factor for you, but the text is the relevant thing, and with the pictures I try to explain my points. Some of the points were mentioned by Eva and Eduard, and I will jump these slides, but in the PDF that will be available later, it is of course included for a more detailed view. Let me start with a bit of entertaining. We saw this publication and the cover page, and there was very, very entertaining and funny remarks going around in the fire community when this report came out yesterday. And but it's also a good example of you should not judge a book by the cover. Inside this report is very, very useful information on prevention, and it is a very good report because I can use it, and I will refer back to this in my presentation from a German or Central European perspective, because there's good content in this report, but we have a gap of reaching the right community or the right audience in Central Europe, in Germany. with this, and also the cover page, in a way it's entertaining, but it's also expressing very well that in Central Europe, very often we talk about fire prevention and think helicopters and firefighting. So that there is a lot of education to be done in defining prevention, preparedness, response, and the differences in it and the commonalities. So this is just for the beginning and the entertainment. The 20 minutes, or now 18 minutes, have to cover 3 points: introduction and background, A, on forestry in our part of the world, B, prescribed fire in our part of the world, then how we can, with both of these management styles, do mitigate wildfire risks. And I conclude with 2 slides, text slides, what we actually need in terms of all of you and maybe the European Union, or in general the fire community out there, because in terms of this, of course, we need help. We're a developing country when it comes to understanding fire in it and all its components. Forestry or forests in Central Europe is a very complex and diverse topic. It is not one type of forestry. It is many different ownerships, many different soil types, many, not all too different, but different climatic influences. So it's not one forest that I can share with you, but I try to be general. We do have single-purpose forests in Central Europe, and I will show you later a picture of a single-purpose forest from Ireland in a Sitka spruce plantation. And we have multifunctional forestry, like many of the forests we probably see in France or Germany, for example. And so we have to be clear, what forestry are we talking about? What ownership of forestry are we talking about? And what style of management are we talking about? That's very, very important to keep in mind if I go back in detail and discuss a few of the options we have. Generally spoken, it's a very productive place, Central Europe. Fuel load is high, probably actually higher than in Southern Europe. So if this all turns into fuel, we probably have some very, very interesting fire behavior to expect. That climate change is affecting us, I do not have to mention. We see a clear rise of fire occurrence in Central Europe, in Germany, not so much in forest actually, but more in the rest of the landscape. But very often this is very, very closely interlinked, and fires that start in agriculture end up in forestry. So looking at our forest fire statistics, which are literally statistics on forest fires, are misleading, because forest fires really, if you read the statistic that way, are on the decline and not on the rise. But generally, if you look at remote sensing, independent statistics and independent data, you have a very, very clear trend of increasing burned area and an increasing number of fires. Of course, we do not have experience and no history of, living with fire or things. So we fall back on, generally, we fall back on what we know, and what we know is calling the fire service. Problem is, and I'll show that later briefly, fire service as well doesn't have experience with wildfire. They're very good in other fires, but not in fires in the territory. Last point on this slide, and I'll show you in pictures later. If you talk here in this part of the world, if you talk about fire prevention, the basic understanding is fire prevention is good access, so a forestry road where a fire truck can drive, and a supply of water. So, and then the discussion and the thinking of what is prevention stops. What Eduard showed us about fuel load and fuel load reduction and fuel management is a concept that is slowly developing here, but it is not embedded in our daily forestry thinking. So I'll show you pictures what I mean with that later. Multifunctional forests, I jumped this because you can read this later. But you see in a multifunctional forest, we have a lot of expectations. So management for all these different expectations are very, very complex and sometimes contradicting. sometimes we can create synergies, even if you mentioned earlier, Eduard, the conflict or potential conflict between biodiversity and fuel load reduction. There are small hopeful examples how we can combine the two in a beneficial way for both. But as you can see from this graphic, many different management approaches, many different objectives, and now fire is not even mentioned in here. The aim after our crisis, you might have heard the news that German forests are sick, and we have a forest dieback large scale. At the moment, we have 285,000 hectares of bark beetle dieback. We have a very clear political message, and from the forest administrations, our remedy and our medicine to deal with this is continuous cover forestry. It's a multi-purpose approach, and it's a compromise model between economy and ecology. And a few of the pictures here, that's just behind my house here in the Black Forest. These are showing you pictures of multiple tree species, different layers, rich in structure, and lots of shade and lots of water in the soil, and very little amount of fine fuel on the forest floor. So quite a resilient, in our conditions, quite a resilient type of forest, not only against fire, but also bark beetle, storm, pest and disease, and other disturbances. But the reality is that the forests, here you see a different aspect from Bavaria, again, different tree species, different age classes, all in the same place. So even if one tree species is affected by bark beetle, it's not a forest dieback, but it's basically a few trees that are dying, and the advanced generation that you can see is very quick to fill any gap that is happening. And again, from a fire perspective, I could well live with such structures because there's very little grass understory and very little fine fuel to carry a surface fire in the first place. A few nice pictures, but the reality is, we also do have, in some places, we do have very good forest-free roads, especially around the bigger cities where recreation plays a big role. But trust me, not all our forest-free roads look like this. Compared to the pictures before, here we have a picture from a single-purpose forestry. This is a Sitka spruce plantation in Ireland, where we had to do some fire investigation some years ago. So here's single-purpose timber production, and all the other elements that I showed earlier in the graphic are kind of second priority, if not third priority. So here, if we talk fire prevention, we have a totally different situation to start from in terms of what society, what the landowner, what policy, and what nature conservation is expecting from these forests compared to multifunctional forest or continuous cover forestry in other places. So it's not easy to find the answer to what forest management is helping us in fire prevention, but we can surely conclude the continuous cover forestry, or what we also say close to nature forestry, is a step in the right direction. A lot of our forests, this is now coming back from Ireland to Germany, a lot of our forests do look like this: monoculture, even aged, very thick, not really thin, a bit unmanaged. And of course, these forests are susceptible for bark beetle, for storm, for fire. And in this picture, you can see there are windmills, there are houses, there are settlements. In our conditions, we don't need big disaster fires to cause massive damage. Small fires, compared to the standards that you know from Portugal or Spain or Italy, small fires are enough to disrupt traffic, infrastructure. So even small fires cause a lot of damage here. Challenges that we face in forestry and forest management in terms of fire resilience, but not only fire, the other disturbances as well. So the overall objective is to convert these forests towards more resilient forms of forestry, close to nature, continuous cover forestry, mixed tree species, many different layers, good structure, no clear felling. We promote natural regeneration. With that, you need to manage deer, otherwise you don't only get the tree species mixture that we want. And Eva mentioned earlier the plan to plant 3 million trees or 3 billion trees in the future. With this type of forestry, your natural regeneration is producing many more young trees like you could ever plant, and ideally in a very good mixture of different tree species. We discussed the conflicting objectives. For example, here we discussed dead wood. It's terrific for biodiversity, very good for our soil developments, for humus development, but of course it can be fuel. So now we have a black and white discussion versus dead wood, biodiversity and fire prevention, instead of defining, okay, we want a dead wood concept in our forests and we want dead wood for soil and biodiversity, but not in the last 50 meters left and right side of a forest road, for example. We don't discuss the compromises, we discuss black and white, dead wood versus fire prevention or fuel load reduction. And this is sometimes very, very difficult. Of course, you know, these pictures, our fire services, I don't have to show you the statistics of climate, burned area, number of fires. This is all very, very clear language. Okay, coming to this second topic of the presentation, prescribed fire in Central Europe. Very new topic. Fire was used in agriculture, but the use of fire in agriculture was banned, for example, in Germany in 1975. And you can imagine since then, a lot of traditional knowledge, if it ever existed, disappeared. But fire research, we have articles in forestry magazines from the year 1925, 1930, where foresters did publish articles on fighting fires, on using fire for regeneration of pine forests in Germany. And already back in 1921, the first idea of continuous cover forestry was presented in Germany. And yet now it's 100 years later, and we still have no idea how to fight fires, nor to use fire, nor to do continuous cover forestry on a real landscape scale. Very interesting time frame. If we use fire in Central Europe, and I'm speaking here more about the German context, it is limited to basically 4 weeks a year, where you can burn in terms of ground nesting birds and environmental protection, etc. In these 4 weeks, you probably have 5 days, 10 days maximum where the weather is actually supporting fire. And I'll show you pictures later. We treat the fire use as a rocket science. I'll show you pictures to elaborate on that point a little bit later. We use fire in open landscape, military training areas, heathlands, etc., but not in forest. Again, I have good pictures on that. Now, who's doing the burning in Germany, for example? Very, very limited. It's a handful of people that have the qualification and the experience. And it's a huge market, in my opinion, to train enough people that they can confidently use fire as a tool. Other problem is we have many, many stakeholders out there. We have fire services, nature conservation, tourism, landowners. Everybody has its own opinion. And to discuss and agree on a shared objective of fire prevention, for example, is close to impossible because we are so used in forestry in Germany to fight for our positions that making a compromise is very, very complicated with that mindset. There are good examples of nature conservation burns that we can use for prevention. So the step from a nature conservation fire to place this fire in a strategic location so it can serve as a fire break, a buffer zone for prevention is happening, but it's very, very slowly. And it is only successful if the fire service that is observing the controlled burning is making that step, that conclusion by themselves. We have other nature conservation measures like for special birds. where we remove vegetation. So if this can be incorporated in a rotating system of fire breaks, for example, we can really combine nature conservation and fire. They are very good examples. Basic problem, and I think you know that from all other countries, but it is especially bad in this country, essentially in Germany. We believe in good fire, and we believe anything else is bad fire. And if you try to explain beneficial use of prescribed burning, you're facing this mentality in the majority of our administrations and also in nature conservation agencies. What you see here, the picture on top, is what we do in Germany. We do burn open heathlands, we do burn military training sites, and this is all for nature conservation. We do not, what you see at the bottom part here, burn inside forests to reduce fuel load. And this is the reason that our forests are not really adapted to fire. We don't have a fire regime or fire history. And a lot of our scientists, researchers in academia say, because our forests have no fire history, we cannot apply fire to reduce fuel load. And I think this is a big mistake, because it is neglecting the change that is happening. It is not accepting that our climate is changing and that our forests will burn sooner or later. And it is not accepting the fact that we can decide when they burn and how they burn. And it is kind of stuck in the current situation and say, okay, fires play no role in our forests. So it's very, very difficult to overcome that attitude and belief to bring fire into forests. At least we have fires in open landscape. The next problem that I see personally is the picture on the right bottom. This is how we normally turn up when we do prescribed burning. So in full PPE, yellow shirts, face masks, helmets, gloves, radios, drones, fully equipped. And with this attitude, with this appearance, you show all the other people that, okay, the people with the yellow shirts are the experts and all the others are stupid. And I think we should overcome this. It's not rocket science. To burn a patch of land is not rocket science. If you see how in other places in the world farmers play with fire, I think this is the normal attitude, where fire is a tool like many other tools. And if we overcomplicate fires with regulations and with PPE and etc., we will always keep this as a special niche. And I don't think we will ever reach critical mass on a landscape scale if we cannot bring it back into the farmer's hands, like you see here. Mitigating the wildfire risks through forest management and the use of prescribed fire can be done. There's huge potential in Central Europe. Up to now, we looked at prevention was understood as a good forest road, so the fire truck can drive in and he finds a water point for water supply. And there's a lot of movement happening, because we had some bad and bigger fires, and now we have 10 or 11 research projects. I'm not totally happy with the direction of all these projects, because we research the use of a lot of technology where, you know, most of us here cannot even work with a fire beater. So I think the research is starting at a too high a level to really reach the practitioners on a daily basis. Fuel management is slowly understood that fuel is the only factor we can influence before fire. And as I said, to burn in a forest, you don't get a permit at the moment. So the concept that you can choose between mild fire and wildfire in our administration, in the nature conservation agencies, and with the landowners is not there. It started, the communication started, the movement started, but it needs a lot more time. Okay. We can reduce fuel load, of course, without fire. We can do grazing. It is not really practical it's too costly here, it's too complicated, and we have an increasing number of predators coming back to Germany, for example, that makes sheep herding or grazing with goats really a challenge for any farmer. out there, so it's not really practical on large scale. And mechanical treatments do work. I have good pictures for that, but we have other problems. If we want to reduce fuel with machinery, we get a problem with Forest Stewardship Council certification. Again, I'll show you pictures a little bit later. Universal truth, we can only manage the fuel. We've seen that. Even in Central Europe, fires burn uphill faster than downhill and all that. Now, mechanical fuel load reduction. We have here a remote control forestry mulcher that we've adopted from the UK and from Spain. Reality in Germany is, if you want to drive this and create a fuel buffer zone with and reduce fine fuel, you will take that forest where you drive, you will take that forest out of your FSC certification, because you're driving machinery off the road. And there's no understanding at the moment with our FSC bodies that this is normal forest management and fire prevention, even if you drive off the road. So there's a long way to go in awareness creating and understanding for people that sit on the certification bodies and on the permission bodies. I like to say we have a very resilient society here, resilient in that way that we like to stick to our old beliefs. It is very, very difficult to change this socio-cultural beliefs that fire is bad and that you cannot do this and then you cannot do that. You cannot apply fire in our forests because they're not adapted and all that. Very, very resilient. And to overcome that resilient society, this is the true challenge. We have good guidance. You know, the statistics from the Sparking Fire Smart Policies report. We have invested, the European Union has invested a lot of money in research. We have a lot of guidance from the European Union, the report that I showed on my first slide, as well as the Sparking Fire Smart Policies in the EU. Very, very good guidance. It is no longer true that all the money is going into helicopters and water bombers. Now we really have good documents and good guidance in integrated fire management, really. And I'm speaking here of Germany, and I think the countries around us are similar, but in Germany is especially true. We don't have good governance and we don't have leadership in the terms of fire management. Fire is an exotic topic. It is high on the agenda if you have a fire burning, but the moment it stops, everybody's going back to his other business. There is not one agency that is taking the lead and really tapping into that huge potential that the European Union is providing us with all this guidance. So maybe I'm a bit critical here, but it's good to provoke the discussion in the country here. I say we don't have an enabling environment. We have no enabling policy support. We don't have enough knowledge exchange. We're doing the wrong research in terms of researching high-tech solutions for low-tech environment. And as a country, there's no clear vision or strategy for fire management. And one of the challenges, the big challenges I see, and that's why I said governance and leadership, Eva showed us the funding mechanisms and the available budget from the European Union. Mariona showed us the solutions map and what we can do. The challenge that I see for a country like Germany is we don't have access to this. The experts on fire management are sitting, they are private individuals, they are researchers, they are motivated, I call them champions for change, but these are not the people that sit in the administration. And the structure is that only our administration staff has access to the European Union. So if I ask a forest administration to tap into the tools that Eva showed us or Mariona, it's simply not the people that understand fire. So there's a huge gap of getting the right people on the table and then choosing the right menu. if I can be clear on that. This is a summary what I said. The last point again, our champions, and this holds true for the UK, Ireland, France, Scandinavian countries, Germany especially. We have champions, but they're often freelancers, individuals, but they have no mandate. They're not part of an administration. They cannot activate the mapping service of the European Union. They cannot tap into the funding. They're not part of the expert groups. So this is a true challenge for us to overcome this communication and access problem. What we need, I think we need help from all of you and from the European Union to really have somebody take our hand and lead us to the table with all the options and tools and funding options that you showed, and explain our administration what to do to tap into this huge potential for the benefit of our country and fire prevention. Of course, we need a strategy that is combining, I'm nearly done, Davide, 1 minute. We need a strategy that is combining all the tools from forest management to agriculture to sustainable tourism to prescribed fire. But for that, we need a common strategy. We need a vision for the country, and we don't have that. Again, here, I think the guiding documents from the EU can help us. But my feeling is our administrations, our government needs help to guidance how to do it. And I think if that help comes from outside, it's more accepted than help from inside. All right, a few good hopeful pictures. You see cooperation here in Germany, nature conservation burning with forest service, with private initiatives. You see development of new tools like this remote control mulcher. You see self-help, build self-made skid units for forestry. We have very promising examples here. An example from Ireland was where you see if you have champions in the administration that understand how to tap into these structures and mechanisms, you can really create something on the ground, which is totally different from what you see in Germany. This is all grassroots and based on individuals that want to work together. The problem from Ireland, for me, is very, very, very promising because it is much more structured and it has more governance support. Core message after my 20 minutes, living with fire in Central Europe, long way to go, and we need all your help. Thank you. And I'm well aware that the time that you spent with us now listening here is gone. It will never come back, and I thank you for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. And really, you brought a perspective from Central Europe, and we fully understand that the fire issue is not just, the society is not just driving the problem, but also is driving how we respond to the problem. So the cultural legacies that each territory has shape the way in which we live the problem, we manage the problem, and we set the solution. So thanks. I think during the discussion, we will have time to go deeper in this. A couple of questions came. And now I give the floor to Juan Picos from the University of Vigo. So welcome, and also to you, thank you very much to accept our invitation. And the theme is very peculiar and interesting. So please, Juan is going to talk about the archaeological and cultural heritage as a strategic element in wildfire prevention in Atlantic Iberia. So please.
Okay, good morning or good afternoon, everyone. I am really grateful to have been invited to this webinar, and I really encourage all these initiatives that I have been seeing during all the morning, just to go ahead and to make us better into wildfire prevention. My presentation is going to be about a project that we have just started at the end of last year. It rises from results of previous projects, and as you said, is something is in a peculiar approach on this thing. The project is called, this is a translation, is Archeological and Cultural Heritage as a Strategic Element in Wildfire Prevention in Atlantic Iberia. The name of the project is Paleointerfaz, and we are using, sorry, I don't know if you can see my my slides. No,
not now, but before, yes.
Yeah, okay, there was some small problem. Sorry about that. I will start the presentation again, so perhaps you could see it.
Not yet.
I think so. It could be sooner or later it will arrive. I mean,
yes, no worries.
I think you can see it now.
Yes, now it is shown.
Okay. Okay. So the name of the project, as I told you, is Paleointerfaz. There is a Spanish term that we have invented, if we can say so, and the translation should be similar. Is Paleointerface. Using paleo as a term, the translation is connected with ancient times, and interface is just that point where two subjects are connected and affect each other. It's just a sort of using the well-known term of wildland-urban interface in this case. And we are going to work in the surrounding of archaeological sites or sites of cultural importance. The project is funded by the Spanish Ministry of Science, and the main researcher is Julia Armesto, that I think is among the audience today. So perhaps if there is any question, she can also answer that. And we have a very diverse research teams where we are foresters, people that are experts in archaeology, and even in cartography and remote sensing. Galicia is in that corner of Europe, and it has shelters thousands of archaeological sites, mostly in rural and forestry and forest areas. All these red dots are sites of archaeological importance or archaeological sites. Most of them are petroglyphs or hill forts or burial mounds as dolmens of tumulus. And we have other elements of importance in the landscape, like wolf spits, roads, walls, and other ethnographic and cultural elements across all the territory in a very high number. And each day more valued by the population from urban areas that think that this is a good place to go and visit and to know about our past in the last millennia, because we have most of them from the Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, and there are some also Roman sites, but most of them are from that age, prehistorical age. But also we have lots of fires in that corner of Europe. You probably know that is a small map of wildfire frequency, that North Portugal, Galicia, there is that region in the corner, and northwestern Iberian Peninsula. It's one of the hotspots in terms of frequency of wildfires. And that's there are some elements behind that reason. One of them is that our plant productivity is too high. That is a map of net primary productivity in Europe. That dark green in the corner is showing that our ecosystems are producing a lot of biomass during the year, but also we have a climate that is special in terms that this is oceanic 9 months a year and Mediterranean 3 months of dry at the summer. So that huge amounts of biomass are going to be dry for 2 or 3 months, where they are very prone to get fire and big intense fires if there's a lot of fuel load. And also the expectations are not very well in that sense, because it seems that climate change is bringing us a bigger drought period. So we will be combining this biomass production during part of the year with bigger drought periods, very dangerous for forest fires. And also we have a history of use of fire in the territory. Most of our land has been burned at some point in the past. All the human settlements burn all the land just for grazing, for introducing agriculture, and also for this defensive purposes, where people were living in these hill forts. They're burned all around, so nobody can hide and prepare some attack to that hill fort. If we are digging in the ground and looking at the soil, we can see this line of stones that mark that from more than 4, 5, 6, 10,000 years, fires has been burning in Galicia, in this northwest part of the Iberian Peninsula, and marking these erosion processes that leave these lines of stone. So you can see here's an example of 3 clear lines of stone that mark 3 clear events of wildfires and after fire erosion. And we think that there are clear opportunities for improvement, this link between these cultural heritage sites and wildfire prevention. One of them is that we have to protect these sites from wildfire management. And this is an example of one of the fires in the last years that heavily damaged some of these important archaeological sites in Galicia. So we have one problem, that we have to protect these elements from raging wildfires, high intensity fires. But also we have to protect the sites from the damage that can create the wildfire fighting and prevention. Sometimes when we have a fire in the territory, the brigades are just going to work to try to stop it, or when we are trying to do some management in the vegetation, burnings or mechanical uses, we can damage these sites. This is an example from the news channel in Galicia, where during the wildfire fighting, one of the bulldozers ran through a hill fort and damaged badly some archaeological important site. So that's the thing that we have to prevent, and we have to coordinate this conservation with the wildfire prevention, so we can not only protect them, but also make the firefighting brigades aware that there are some values and they are resilient to forest fires. But also we have to take care about the safety of people visiting these sites in the event of a forest fire. This is an example of one of the most visited archaeological area. All these yellow dots are archaeological remains or petroglyphs mainly, and you can see that daily are dozens of people's buses with childs visiting these areas. So we have to take care also of them if there is a forest fire in this area, how to manage this population that can be concentrated in a very dangerous point if there is a fire. But above all, I think that there is a clear opportunity of thinking multifunctional management in the environment of these sites, so we can increase the resilience of the territory to wildfires. I mean, though this, because of this widespread presence in the rural and forest areas, we can use these cultural remains as part of the network of that mosaic of the territory that can make these sites more protected, but also the territory more resilient. And I can show you some examples. This is a Google Earth image. That red line marks the area that was burned in 2017. You can see the result of that in the next slide. And this brownish part in the middle of the picture is an archaeological area that it was treated, the vegetation was treated just for people to visit that area. And afterwards, there was the forest fire, and that acted as a clear point of management that avoid a huge propagation of the wildfire in that part. You can see in the picture the result of that actuation, and also in a land from the floor you can see how in the right there is the burned area, and in the left the protected area by this management unit that was not aimed to protect from forest fire, was only aimed to conserve these archaeological sites. So this is an evidence that we can do more if we plan, just not accidentally. We have this result, but we can plan it and use it wisely. This is another example in another part. It's a hill fort. That red area was the fire, and you can see more or less in the same way that central part was treated just for conserving and maintaining these archaeological sites, and it acted as a very good control point for the fire brigades during the forest fire. Afterwards, it was the result. And we are planning to work using multispectral and 3D based technologies just for studying concrete pilot areas and understanding what we can do, what are the best practices of wildfire prevention that are compatible with the cultural conservation of these sites, and also how we can measure and understand that special land use that we have in these areas. We are trying to, in the technology part of this project, to build a multi-scale, multi-platform, multi-sensor way of measuring and modeling biomass, fuels, and treatments, and also the post-fire severity and impacts that we have in these special parts. But also we can use them to characterize and to get value and information from the archaeological sites itself. We are planning to use TLS, UAVs, satellites, and also portable LiDAR, just to try to study several areas of this interest, just to understand what are the best things that we can do that can be good for wildfire protection, but also compatible to the management of the cultural values of these areas. As I told you, we are starting a couple of months ago. We expect to go to 2024, I think, and I hope we can show in other webinars further on clear results on individual sites, that we can show that it's not just only a matter of managed agriculture or grazing or other normal activities we do in the forests, but also these cultural values can have a good point for improving the resilience of the territory in a land like in the northwest of the Iberian Peninsula. So I won't go much farther, and I thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Juan. I think it's a perfect example of synergy, the type of synergies we were looking for in the Prevail project. So this is, let's say, fall within the definition of a smart solution. So having the interaction between multiple interests and synergies. So for example, using the funds to protect this archaeological site within the framework of landscape planning that address a larger fire propagation. So this is a perfect way to integrate multiple resources for a common goal. So thanks, Juan. And I think now we are getting to the point in which we can finally discuss. And so I invite all the invited speakers to switch on their camera. And now I invite the audience to also set questions on the question and answer tool of Zoom, and then we can start the discussion. So first things, I think that Joy wanted to, let's say, address some of the remarks that Alexander Held did during his presentation. So please, Joy, briefly, if you want to interact and open the discussion.
Yes, thank you, Davide. First of all, thanks a lot for these super interesting presentations that shed an interesting light on this very important topic. I think Alexander, if I can call you so, has underlined very important aspects as well. First of all, I think it's right at some point to say that the Commission initiative to draft useful guidance is a first step forward in the right direction. And I think you're right to say that there's not only helicopters to finance, there's a lot more that we can do on this aspect. And I'm actually working in a directorate that does prevention and preparedness actions only. So we really focus on that, and because we think it's an important aspect of the whole policy. Now, of course, member states' decisions remain national. So there are lots of things that we can do, but it's not in our power to push administrations. But what we can do is to inform and to communicate. So we have, for instance, info days about funding opportunities, and we invite everybody to come and listen. So there is one tomorrow. I mentioned I can put the link in the chat if you want. And today at the Civil Protection Committee, it is advertised as well. So we try to reach out to member states delegations so that they know what is possible. And perhaps on the side, we also have tools and instruments like advisory missions, and we have peer-to-peer exchanges as well that are possible in the Commission. So under the cohesion policy, we finance exchanges between administrations of different countries. So countries can request this assistance, and then we cover the costs. Of course, now with COVID is a bit more complex, but in usual times, we will resume that, I think, very soon. And so this can also help put administrations in contact, and could be one option. I mean, there are lots of options, but I see your point. So interesting point as well. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joy. I don't know if you, Alex, do you want to briefly add something in reply, or?
Maybe just, it is a spontaneous idea that I had. If there are information days and exchange options, like you mentioned, Joy, I'm still seeing the problem that you're inviting, let's say, an administration officer from Germany, from the Federal Forest Service or from the State Forest Service of Bavaria. The day-to-day job of that person is maybe timber sales or deer management or nature conservation, and really not fire. So I still see the gap that how do we get the right people in the administrations that have access to your exchange programs and your information days? Because really in our situation, the experts are sitting somewhere else and not in the administrations. But I think maybe we can facilitate that bridge between the universities, the exchange platforms, your office and the administrations, and provide guidance to the administration and say, well, if you don't have a fire expert, that's not a problem in your administration, because we could find expert advice for that person, so we can go to the exchange with the European Union better informed or something like that. But that facilitation, I think, is a big importance. Thanks.
All right, thanks for this interesting discussion. And just a brief communication, since there were some questions about the material that has been produced within this webinar. So you will find all the documentation and the recording of the event on the Prevail website. So you will have on the menu, the project menu, and there you will find the webinar page with all the information you need, including the PDF of the presentation. So this is for your information. So there's I think a question important that is related to what Prevail did during his 2 years of life, and is related to the use, the transversal use of European funds to prevent wildfire and to build a fire resilient landscape. So one of these tools is the European Rural Development Program. And we know, everybody, that most of the prevention that we do in Europe, especially in Southern Europe, is funded by the Rural Development Program. However, what happened that currently measures for fire prevention are mainly related and framed within the forestry measure, so measure like 8.3 or 8.4. But it is increasingly evident that fire regimes in Europe are the result of a complex interaction, you know, between biophysical and socioeconomic drivers, and so socioeconomic changes that are related to the rural world, not just the forestry world, but the agricultural and pastoral worlds. And so a question that is open to everybody, please, any of you can reply to this. Do you believe that in the next rural development program, we need a more transversal way to address fire prevention? So include the fire prevention in a much more diverse number of measures. So not just the one in the forestry sector, but those measures that support agricultural and pastoral entrepreneurship in areas where fire hazard is high, or in strategic field management areas. And for example, measures that support supply chains for the use of byproducts that use raw material that comes for fire prevention. So do we need this more transversal way to use the rural development program measures?
David, I would like to taking your question. Also, I have a question that is very related to this. Yesterday there was here in a workshop here in Spain about the impact of rural development program new agricultural policy in forestry management, organized by the forest ownership. Was very interesting, and what basically shows is that the new programming period is asking for a clear subsidiarity principle. So countries will have much more capacity to decide their own priorities. And here I would like to make a point with a link with what Alex was telling. So it means that I think that with the presentation of Eva and Joy, now we have a very consistent context, European context, where the problem is well defined. I mean, I think that for a long time working in fires, never have seen so consistent and coherent approach to the wildfire issue. I think that this is also because these experts, they have access to the European Commission in terms of transferring the scheme. But what happens in the regions is that normally with, you know, remember, David, with the interviews asking people about the implementation of wildfire programs, etc. Since the budget is the same for promoting forestry and doing prevention, there means also a conflict. So we should work in a scheme where in some way additional funds are in place. Probably, and this is a question also for Joy, but also would like to take advantage of the context of the Atlantic context and also Central Europe context. I would like to ask them from each own experience and perspective, how they perceive the role of the private sector with regards wildfire issue. I mean, so here in the Mediterranean, it's quite clear, you know, the touristic sector is very vulnerable. So no one's want to be affected by a wildfire, apologize for the expression, killing people in a touristic and resort area. So if all the pressure is in funds regarding rural development policies, we always will be in conflict with the clear need of promoting grazing, forestry, etc., from commercial point of view. But what about mobilizing new funds from a perspective of, do the land economic activities resilience in front of? It's for that I make the link with the urban agenda and so on. So just if you could, Juan, Alex, and especially Joy, give us some short feedback about, for instance, if there is a private sector coming to the European Commission, the civil protection mechanisms, asking for, agreements or how to work together, of course, and involve them in being more resilient and self. I mean, the example of Juan Pico is very good, and this is a kind of paradox. We have a similar situation here in the Mediterranean. We see the wildlife-urban interface, the urbanization as a problem, but more and more we are integrating them in the wildfire risk, because if we prepare these infrastructures to cope the impact of a fire, they are also giving us an opportunity to suppress more effectively. So just as an open question, for if we don't find additional source of funds, this will be really difficult.
Yes, please. Alex was asking to intervene, so please, Alex.
I forgot what I wanted to say. No, I've no real clear answer for you, Eduard, with the private sector, but I agree that we need to engage more with other sectors like the private sector, and the urbanization that you say in our context here, it's not so much the urbanization or the, that the disturbance, fire disturbance is hitting the urbanized areas. It's more that a lot of the decisions for the rural areas, for the forest owners, for the forest policy, for national parks, for agriculture, are strongly influenced by urban mindset, because the majority of voters live in cities. And a lot of the decisions, political decisions, are made based on public opinion, and the public is in the cities. And therefore, if we can reach out and stop preaching to the converted, like here, we all, it's always the same faces that we meet. I think then we can start having influence on politicians, and that's why the private sector, the tourism sector, I think it's very, very important. The last comment I wanted to make is what we see here in Germany now. We have 285,000 hectares affected by bark beetle. All the foresters that managed their forests in the past 30 years close to nature, continuous cover forestry, etc., they do not have damage. They are not so affected by drought, they're not affected by bark beetle, and they didn't have fires. So all the foresters that had monocultures, etc., a bit general now, but they have the damages. The subsidies that we pay out now are going to the bad management examples. We're not promoting the good examples. So maybe an incentive for fire could be, this time we try to turn it around. We want to give subsidies and bonuses to the good examples, to these champions out there that really do something, and not, again, we have a big fire in Germany. Where's the money going? To this place where there was no prevention, they get all the new fire trucks, etc. So it's again, we're on this road of subsidizing the wrong management. And then after the bark beetle, we're replanting now monoculture. And the people that invested energy, time, and enthusiasm in managing their forest in a more resilient way, they get nothing. Thank you very much. So I think this is just a comment that maybe we can change this for fire.
I don't know how to raise the blue hand in this Zoom interface, so I will just take the mic to try to answer the question by Eduard. In my region in Galicia, 98% of the land is private. So most of the fire prevention is made by small farmers, owners, and whatever. There are huge amounts of budget by the public, but if we add all together what everybody is going to do in their own plots, there's a huge amount of money and efforts, sometimes not effective enough. But our fire regulation says that the prevention has to be made by the owner of the land. There are some subsidies and some other acts by the administration, but the responsibility is full by the owner. But we have another problem, that is that normally the owner of the land is not the owner of the big risk, and that's the example of where people has been building houses in the forest or rural areas. So the responsibility is their neighbor to remove the vegetation, not to damage my home. So there is a big owner of the risk, and there is a big owner of the responsibility. That is not the same people, and this is a very ineffective way of treating, because there is a conflict in there. I mean, the forest was here before your house, so why I have to cut down all my trees because you build your house near mine? So we have to explore this thing. So this effort, this lot of discussions that are in the territory of how to manage this risk are dealing in the proactive way, and not just conflict. That also the administration has to go there and to find the people that do not do things. And I mean, we have conflicts overlapped on there. Lots of efforts, lots of money spent, but the effective is not the optimum. And also there are other newcomers to the rural areas with infrastructures, or even wind farms, or even all huge investments that they are not aware that they are responsible of managing their own risk on this kind of investments. So I think you are right. We have to try to move proactively most of this interest of other agents or stakeholders that are newcomers in the rural areas, just to help the old rural owners that are still in there, and also maintaining a resilient territory in this whole. So our example in cultural heritage is just trying to show that if we are trying to manage properly these important sites, we can also help the rest of the territory to be more resilient against forest fires. And I think that's a good message in that proactive way.
Yes, thanks, Juan. I don't know if Joy, you want to intervene and let's say add comments to all this discussion.
Perhaps I can say just a word well, about the role of the private sector. I think indeed that's a super interesting topic, and we're working towards hearing what the public has to say on the private sector in many aspects. I mean, you could think of risk management and what insurance companies could add as data, sharing data in general, not just wildfire. And then also from my past experience in cohesion, we were working a lot with civil society on various aspects. You may know also that when the Commission is launching an initiative, there's usually a public consultation as well. So that's also a place where the public can share concerns, and then it's analyzed by people from the Commission. Obviously, on more budget, I think we never had bigger budget than we have now. And you all know that the focus is on COVID, resilience for the economies, putting back the economy on track. So it's true that in these moments it's always difficult to come up with other aspects of life. But that they come in a way as a second layer. But of course, under civil protection, we continue to finance these projects and to be very attentive to all the needs in wildfire prevention and others. But it's true that if you look at the budget, the big chunk this year and in the coming years will be focused on COVID resilience.
Yes, thanks. I think another interesting issue that was raised by the question from the audience, and is in relation to one of the last point addressed by Eduard. So the conflict with nature conservation. This is a major issue when we manage the land for reducing the fire risk, but often we find opposition from, let's say, environmentalists and so on. How we can address better this point, how we can communicate that there are no conflicts, but often what we do for reducing fire risk has multiple and benefits and synergies also for nature conservation. This is an important issue, and I agree with Alex that we in forestry, in silviculture in Europe, we still miss this link often, so that preventive silviculture can have a multiple benefit also for nature conservation. So I think that in USA is quite, let's say, obvious. In Europe is still lacking this approach. So this is an issue that you might want to add further point and perspective. Someone of you.
You mean Davide just trying to answer this complex issue in short? Well, I mean, I think that again, Joy, coming back about the budget, for sure budget is there, but I think that this wildfire issue is showing in some ways a meeting point between a lot of rural demands and also urban demands. But at this meeting point has some externalities, and again I'm quite surprised about which this common objective of protecting forests, of course protecting biodiversity within forest. It seems that can appear some conflicts when you try to protect them with full management. So basically for me it's an indicator of more information is needed, but that what the discussion was in the chat, that information not always is needed to be addressed directly to society, which yes, for sure, but also we have the academia, we have the public services inside. So it's one of the underlying constraints about promoting management generally, full management generally. So how to explain better people that this role is possible in terms of mitigating risk, and the sustainability of land management, agricultural and forest management is there because we have a strong legal frame from Europe ensuring that this management is sustainable. So, but this is some kind of the human ecosystem, Juan. I mean, it's part of the environment. We have trees, we have hazard, we have climate change, increasing temperature, and we have people, which is also changing the perception of forests. And also we probably from a pluridisciplinary point of view, maybe foresters are not good in all, but we have also to integrate expertise to be able to manage this human dimension of landscapes and demands.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, so I think my colleague Eva would want to come back in because she might have an answer for you. I mean, she's more an expert on forests, obviously, than me. I don't know if technically it's still possible that she joins. She's trying, she told me.
And yeah, Joy, it is possible. We will send again the invitation to her right now.
I take advantage of this moment to say, okay, the discussion is always the best part of these meetings. And of course, there's always very few time for the discussion, but there are two upcoming events of the Prevail project, so where we are going to continue to discuss about these issues. So if you go on the webpage of the Prevail project, you will find information about a workshop that will be held in mid-April on these issues, smart solution for landscape management. And then we will have the final conference of the 16th of April. And so you are welcome to join us also in these upcoming events. Is Eva entered? So sorry, the Prevail conference will be the 21st of April, right? And you will find all the information on the website.
Yes,
Eva,
hello,
please.
Eva. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear. Now I have finished my my meeting, and I would like to join with you, again. It is finished, the webinar, or not?
No, we are just at the end of the discussion, but we thought that a contribution from you will be very welcome.
Okay.
So actually, we were discussing a lot of things, but now it's not that easy to summarize, but one of the last point was conflicts of interest around forest management and how often risk management reduction conflicts apparently with other land management goal, and particularly biodiversity conservation, it looks like, but actually there are no conflicts, but often synergies. Do you have something to add to this issue?
As all of you are also scientists, you know that always the management issue is a very interesting issue. There is always conflict of interest in forest management, in land management in general. But I think now, after a lot of work that have been done on research stage, but also now also this European legislative framework with strategies will encourage all of us to have this sustainable forest management, taking into consideration biodiversity issue, and also biodiversity and sustainable forest management. We need all of us to understand that it's now a new era of European new growth. It's like green growth. This green growth generates green jobs. Biodiversity, sustainable forest management means also the creation of green jobs, and new economic opportunities. Nature-based solutions as core investments mean that is like investments, deliver economic impact, and we have the financial support, as I presented before. This financial support based on the green solutions. Green solutions in terms of energy, in terms of climate change, in terms of forest sustainable management, in terms of forest investments. I think that that's why I mentioned that now we are at the really the most enabling environment to implement this issue, like sustainable forest management, integrated biodiversity issue, and parallel creating also green jobs or benefits to local economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I think we have to give the floor to Anthony Trasovares, that is the director of the Forest Science and Technology Center in Catalonia. Welcome, and thanks for closing this webinar, and thanks for hosting it. Please.
Thank you very much, Davide, and nice to hear your discussions. This landscape design or resilient landscapes, resistant landscapes, this is one of the big issues in the the coming years, I think. I mean, we do have the Green Deal policies, which fortunately will be implemented with a dimension that, at least so far, it looks they are being implemented. We do have bioeconomy strategies, biodiversity strategies. I think this year there should be a forest strategy for Europe, and everything is converging on the territory in practice, no? Because we want to change the economy model. We want to promote this new type of economy and territorial management as well, no? That finds a balance with climate change, but at the same time, natural capital, but as well people living in the territory and in cities, and economics are competitive, because if those are not competitive with public subsidies, we are not going to make it. We know that. So the big question is, I mean, when I think about this issue is how can we manage that? Once I think there is enough knowledge and experts on that, and there may be not easy but feasible participatory processes in which fire prevention, silviculture, and territorial design, biodiversity conservation, rural development, to find agreements, to find convergence solutions, and which of course they are not going to be the maximum, the optimal utility for each of those stakeholders, but we may find reasonable solutions for landscape design. So once that is in line, and fortunately the bioeconomy and this new way of addressing the economy helps on the design and then on sustaining those landscapes, which should be as well adaptive to what is happening. So I think the challenge as well is, how do we manage in a given region, territory, so that there is someone looking for the whole of it, no? That is in charge of taking care that the landscape design and the way landscape is evolving in a given region, in a place, is meeting those requirements. Because we have, of course, the public administration, the legal framework, but we have the private actors, private owners, the companies, and I think that's a challenge that we, not only from science but from policy making and from different levels, the private actors, how do we manage to look at the whole and to take care that those different views and different objectives of different actors are met in these landscapes that we agree. But I believe that is feasible, and of course it will need to be in the higher priority levels of policies, and not only in the theory, but from Europe, then the States, and then at the regional levels, in which quite often practical decisions are made. We should manage to that is one of the 2-3 main items in a given region, 2, 3, 4. If it's only sort of number 10 or 12, then it's going to be hard, and then of course there may be a severe forest fire, and serious things may happen, and then afterwards probably there will be a reaction. But let us see if bringing all that together we manage to go in the right way. I'm confident, which doesn't mean it will be easy, and not much more to say. I mean, here in CTFC, we are glad that you're having this meeting today. Many thanks to all of you, and especially to Eduard and Marta. We work very much. I would say this landscape dynamics and fire prevention, fire as a science, and as well this resilient landscape issues is between our 2-3 main objectives here on the science and the applied projects we do here in CTFC. So we are glad to see that there are projects like this one, and that all together from the different levels that I was trying to mention, we can manage to bring science and not only science but policies and that knowledge that people living in the territory has, which is maybe not science but is not really valuable component that we managed to make all that possible. So not much more from my side. Thank you very much, and looking forward to next meetings. I hope next one I can stay longer with you. These interactive agendas are challenging nowadays, but this is really a very interesting topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anthony. And please, maybe Anna, to you to say hello to everybody and to the next meetings.
Okay, thank you very much to all the speakers that have contributed, I hope, to a successful webinar. So we invite all of you and all the people to follow us on the next events and to use our result as far as possible. Bye-bye, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Keep
Thank
safe.
you.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
Joy. Bye-bye.